podcast. With me today, I have the lovely Jessica Henrard, and she is a NRT specialist, a Neuro Reset Technique. And we're going to learn all about that. But she's also another lady, a wonderful lady who participated in the 90-day fat loss challenge in Bella's Steak and Butter Gang. And so she has some amazing results. So we're going to talk all about that too. Welcome, Jessica.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to speak to you again after our last roundtable. It was so good. So
Oh,
fun to other carnivore people and other mummies and other women that have had really epic results with eating this type of way.
I know. And I loved our conversation. I felt like we had so much more that we could have talked about.
Gosh,
Um,
we've gone on for hours.
yes, I know, but we don't have hours because we're busy moms. And
Yeah, that's true.
um, but yeah, I want to talk to you all about the process for you. And also, before we start, why don't you tell everybody, who you are, what you do for people who may not know?
Yeah, sure. I'm Jessica Henrard and I am a health and fitness professional. So I've been in health for, oh my gosh, almost 20 years. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, a really long time. And started off all the normal stuff, university, did my degree in sports, did all of that. That was actually where I met Professor Bart Kay. He was one of my uni professors back in the day. So that's how we have a pretty long history together. And then did lots of post-grad stuff. But then 10 years ago, I was really lucky to be invited to learn Neuro Reset Technique. So NRT is a neuromuscular based therapy. So working with the brain and the nervous system to restore muscle function. So muscle recruitment efficiency. So we work with the brain and nervous system directly. So when I found that modality, it literally changed my whole world and my whole life in terms of what I understood about the human body, what I understood about like exercise application, any kind of like trying to get your muscles to do X, Y, and Z, it
Mm.
flipped it on its head. So I can tell you all about that, but that's just what I started learning a decade ago. And yeah, it's been completely transformational in terms of how I approach my clients, what I do with them, how I prescribe, all those bits. So it's been amazing. That's probably been my biggest impacting thing that I've learned in my life so far. And it's one of these things that's ever evolving. So we do every week. I have online, because he's in London, the founder of NRT, Simon
Hmm.
Frost, is based in London. So we do weekly like this Zoom calls, and we do all the updates and all the new pieces, because it's just growing and growing and growing, as you can imagine with
Yeah.
anything with the human body. Yeah, we're finding out more and more about it, and we're finding out better ways of doing it. And so yeah, so I have that ongoing. But yeah, so that's kind of who I am, how I got into health and stuff basically came about because I had, as I mentioned on that roundtable we did, I had like a ton of health issues myself. So
Hmm.
probably since birth, if I'm honest. Like I
Yeah.
was covered in eczema when I was born. I had lots of issues from that point onwards in terms of my skin, my digestive system. It never worked properly. And I'd gone through lots of different, like everybody, tried everything to get my health better, and was well overweight, dermatitis, skin issues, gut and health issues, weight issues, headaches. I suffered terrible migraines when I was at college. Yeah, just not in a very good state. And so I had basically saved up my money because I just started one of the courses that I did before I got into sport. And I'd saved all my money to see this personal trainer, thinking that, she was going to be the answer to all my prayers
Yeah.
and that she was going to help me. And basically, this trainer chose inappropriate exercise for my body and my problems, because I had back issues, hip issues. My Achilles were so tight they were basically on the verge of snapping. Like I
Oh
was
my
in a
gosh.
state. Yeah.
Wow.
And it exacerbated everything. And I went to nutritionalists, and it made all my symptoms worse. And I tried detoxes, and I tried potions and powders and creams and Weight Watchers and Jenny Craig's, which are like, you know, like kind of shaky plans and
Yeah.
calorie restriction. And I mean, you name it, I have basically done it. So I got into health because this woman injured me, essentially, this trainer injured me. And when I went to the gym, just to let them know, look, guys, this exercise has been inappropriate for my body. And my physio has said to me, you need to go and tell them that this isn't right.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, well, we don't care. You signed a waiver. And I just,
Oh,
you know, the waiver thing, they were just like,
yeah.
well,
That's
we
how
don't
they,
care.
that's how they cover their butt. Yeah.
And it just disappointed me so much. And from being in that really hopeless state and that really upset state, and then having that happen, I just felt completely, yeah, I mean, hopeless really fits that word for me, because I didn't know what else to do. And I think that's where you get stuck. It's like, how do I get help? How do I fix myself? How do I heal myself? What am I
Yeah.
doing wrong? Why can't I get my body to just be healthy and work the way that it should?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I went, you know what, there's got to be something better in the world than this. And so that's when I started studying. I thought, I'm going to become the best trainer on the planet. And I'm going to really care about people. I'm going to really help people. And that kind of kickstarted my own journey into health at quite a young age. I think I was like 18, 19 when I
Oh,
started.
wow. That
Yeah.
is
So
young.
that's when I was like, right. And so ever since then, it's just been this like constant study, constant
Mm-hmm.
looking for something better, because I was a really good trainer. And if someone came to me and went, I need to lose weight, I want to get fitter, or I need to put muscle on, reasonably easy to do. But if someone was injured, that's where I got really stuck, Rosa. Like I didn't know what to do. You know, you'd modify the exercise. You go, okay, let's change this angle. Let's try this, let's try this band. Let's try this da da da. And sometimes you'd be able to modify around it, but sometimes you couldn't do anything with it. And it didn't matter what you did to try and get that muscle working, engage that muscle tissue.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't. And so, I'd get stuck. I'd go, okay, well, maybe you need to go see an osteo or a physio or a chiropractor, or, someone else, because I've got to my point of capability. I can't help you any further. I don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I began this kind of like searching for something better, searching for something more. And so that's when I came across muscle activation technique. I don't know if you've heard of MAT, but MAT is
Yeah.
quite big in the States. It's been around for probably about 35-ish years.
Mm-hmm.
And there are clinics all over the US and quite a few now in Europe. And so I started learning muscle activation technique. But what I found though was, unfortunately, it was only a really temporary change. So the
Mm-hmm.
idea was you're trying to recruit the muscle, but the
Mm-hmm.
minute you put a stimulation into a different sensor or a different receptor on somewhere else of your body, it would
Mm-hmm.
just go weak again. So it wasn't permanent,
Oh.
but it was still better than anything I'd seen. And I was like, okay.
Now, is
So
that the technique where they kind of put those little electrodes on your muscles?
no,
No, it's a different one. Okay.
but it's a similar kind of principle where you're trying to get some stimulation into that muscle tissue, into the fibers, to try
Okay.
and get them to contract.
Yes.
But it's not permanent. It didn't last. It was very short lived. And the minute you put either a stimulation into a different area of the body, or you put too much force through that receptor, it just went weak again. So again, it wasn't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, basically I was introduced to someone that was teaching that modality, and he had a scientific discovery, which is that basically if you bias different sensory systems or different sensory inputs into the body, you could make a permanent change or a long-lasting change to that muscle's ability to recruit. So therefore
Oh.
restoring that neuromuscular or that neurosensory muscular pathway. And when I first saw it, it sounds really like, it's like, what the hell?
Yeah. Is that kind of like muscle memory, or is that different?
No,
Okay, that's different. Okay.
yeah. So with Neuro Reset Technique, it is an instant and lasting modality. So when I came across this and I was introduced to it, I didn't understand how it worked, because my understanding of the human body is there's nothing instant out there that can give you strength, control, and function in minutes. Like, it doesn't exist. You know, what we believe, or what we currently understood, or what I currently understood from, you know, university, was if I want to get this elbow flexor to work, then I need to either do repetition through that tissue, or I need to progressively overload that tissue. So I'll go to the gym and I'll do this workout and I'll do this exercise, and then I'll go up gradually in either repetitions or load to try and get stronger in the tissue. That's how I understood the body worked. That's how I programmed. That's what I knew. And so when I was shown this technique where you could get instant strength gains, instant range of motion improvement, so your mobility or your flexibility would improve, and there was no releasing of anything, there was no stretching of anything, I had to like kind of recalibrate my brain and go, well, how does this work?
Yeah.
And so when I was shown it, I was like, oh my gosh, please teach me. This is like the future of health and fitness. I want to be right at the forefront of this stuff. Also, I really want to help people. For as long as I can remember, I've wanted to help people. When I was a little girl, I wanted to help people. When I was, before I went to college, I wanted to either be a surgeon or something like that. I was really interested in the human body and anatomy and physiology and how things kind of worked. And my mum used to buy me like hearts and things, and I'd sit and cut them up and look inside. And I was a bit of a weird child.
like real hearts? Like animal
Real
hearts?
hearts.
Or oh wow.
She'd get hearts from the butcher, a cow or a lamb or whatever heart, and I would sit there and I'd cut it up and I'd look at all the ventricles and I'd look, you know, I was so interested in the human body. I think they bought me my first stethoscope when I was like about 10 or 11. Like, I wanted to listen to the heart and I wanted to listen to breathing, and I found it really interesting. And I wanted to help people. And I'm really glad that, you know, whatever you believe in, source, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, I was lucky enough to find the right path in terms of what to learn, because pretty much most of the information that I learned at university, I had to scrap and unlearn it and be really open. And I think that's why the food thing has really fit with me and with us too, is because it makes sense. It's actually really, really simple.
Yeah.
And it's species appropriate, you know. And so when those things clicked in my brain with food, and when I was introduced to NRT, it made sense to me. I was like, okay, basically our body doesn't have control over what it doesn't know. So we have different receptors, sensors in our body, and they send information to our brain. Our brain processes the information coming in, or the input coming in, and then it sends a message back to say what to do. It says contract or lengthen, you know. It's as simple as input equals output. If your input is poor, then your output or control over that system is going to be poor. So I was like, okay, well, that makes sense to me, because our body has basically, if we think of them as three senses, it has a sense of position. Okay, so where is my arm in space, right? It has a sense of movement. Where is my arm, the rate of velocity moving through an area, right? And then it has a sense of force. How much force do I need to lift my arm or pick up this bag or hold this load? So those three senses are things that we can improve and enhance, which is instant when we're working with the brain and the nervous system. And so you can look at something that has poor sense of either one of those things, poor sense of position, movement, or force. And so you can't produce what you're asking it to produce. Your range or your position will be short, will be poor. Your ability to generate force in that area will be poor. And when we restore these individual, it's called a sensory neural pathway, then you'll have strength, control, and movement sense over that joint or over that muscle tissue straight away. And I mean instantly.
Wow.
And it's really bizarre to experience. Okay, I'm really weak. So you do a muscle test, you put them here and you go, okay, hold your arm, and they've just got nothing. You know, literally, we're talking 5 minutes later, they're holding the contraction, they're strong, they've got more range of motion, and it is really quite, it will blow your mind.
Yeah. No,
It's so
that is so interesting. Now, I'm kind of wondering, when you're working with people with this technique, do you have to get them in a healthy place with their nutrition, outside of this?
I love that question, Rosa.
Yeah.
It's actually really important.
Mhm.
People often come in the worst possible state to me, and it is because, unfortunately, the information that's out there on the mainstream is completely wrong. So
Yeah.
they're trying their best to be healthy, a lot of them, but they're just nowhere near it. And they find it very challenging to get their head around that what they're doing is actually being detrimental to their situation. What I would say with NRT is that it works for everybody. There's not a single person I've put my hands on that this hasn't worked for. So I have this real confidence that I can help anybody. And that's quite a nice feeling to have. It's like, yes, I can do, yes, I can help you. However, I do work on nutrition, sleep, stress, those other elements of health, because they do impact on us so greatly. And health is really intertwined, and so it would be almost, I feel, for me anyway, almost neglectful if I didn't touch on those other things, especially if there's something seriously impacting on their health in a negative way. So yeah, I do. My programs are, NRT is my foundation. I need to see what state your body's in, what state your nervous system is in, what your kind of muscle function and motor control is like. Let's have a look at that. Then we go, okay, we're going to touch on your food stuff. We're going to make some improvements to your stress or your sleep or, whatever other elements need helping. And then we're going to give you an exercise program that complements your treatment. So when you recruit a muscle, so let's just go back to the elbow, for example. If you can't get this muscle engaged, okay, then it doesn't matter how many times you do something through repetition, you will not get that tissue engaged. If you think of contractile tone of our muscles' ability to shorten and contract, it's a subconscious thing, It happens, so if you
we're
think,
not thinking about it, we just kind of, we just do it.
And so if we imagine that, yes, we can control some tissue consciously. So if I want to improve my posture, I'm going to sit up, I'm going to put my shoulders back, I'm going to sit my rib cage down, or, for the time that I'm conscious of that, I can stay in that position. But the minute that I lose focus, lose control, I will sit back into my default position. Your posture, our body's posture, is actually a subconscious thing. We're not consciously aware of it. Yes, you can affect it, but the minute you don't, you're not in that same position. And our posture comes down to our resting tone of tissue. And so our resting tone is subconscious. And we can affect posture, obviously, with NRT, because we're changing your subconscious system, your ability to recruit that muscle via your brain and your nervous system, rather than trying to recruit it through thinking about it or sitting in a certain position. A really good analogy is if you think of a puppet, right? When the puppet is sitting there, it can't move itself. It can't will its limbs to move. It can't will its arms to move.
Yeah.
Same as if we woke up after a coma. It's not our choice. Yeah. And so it's the nervous system, i.e. the strings to the puppet, and the brain, i.e. the person moving, the puppet master moving it, that dictates movement, that dictates motion and function. So the brain and the nervous system is actually what governs our control of our body, our movement in our body. And so if there's something lacking in the information that's coming into the nervous system or to the receptor, then you won't be able to control that. And so if, for example, you're trying to get this muscle to recruit, you may never get that muscle to recruit Because if you don't have the neuromuscular ability to do what you're asking it to do, it doesn't matter how many times you do it, you won't get it. What we do instead is we build really great compensation strategies. So, I'll lift from my elevation, or I'll tilt from my body.
Yeah.
Our body is great at compensating, and we do this all day long without thinking, because your body will get something from point A to point B, no matter how it needs to get it there. But that might be coming from your back, it might be coming from your shoulder, it might be coming from, there's other ways that we can get it up there. And so this is why it made sense to me as well that I'd see people in the gym and they'd be there 5 days a week, and I'd see them every time, hey, how's it going? And their bodies would never, ever change, like ever. And of course, a lot of that is what they're putting in their mouths.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to lie and say that it's not a huge amount dietary related, but also functionally, they didn't really get that much stronger, or it was really gradual increments. They didn't improve their range of motion. They didn't get more mobile in those situations. And then the ones that did get more mobility or range of motion through a joint, when I tested them, they were weak as hell in those positions.
Yeah.
So it's like, what have I lost to gain movement?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And the reason being is that when there is a sensory neural weakness in the system, your body's one of the things it will do is compensate. You use other tissues to get there. But the other thing that it does is it will tighten up. And it gets tight defensively. And the reason it's defending you is because it wants to stop you from going into a space that it has no control over, where it's vulnerable. So your body's solution to a weak neuromuscular system is tightness. It'll go, no, don't go there.
Okay.
So then people start stretching out these tight tissues, going, oh, I need a stretch. I'm so tight. I'm going to do all these stretches, not knowing that actually that's going to inhibit your function even more.
Oh, okay. Wow, that is so interesting.
And it's really hard. People find that really hard to get. They're like, what?
Because I suffer a lot with like always having tight calves. Even though I won't even do any workouts for a little bit, I'll just always have these tight calves. So I always feel like I have to stretch.
Exactly. And that's all I knew as well. And I would have done the same thing. And I would have, as me being your trainer back in the day when I didn't know this, I would have said the same thing. I would have gone, oh, you've got, tight this or weak that. That is the other thing about NRT that I love so much. I'm so grateful for the fact that your body gives me the answers. So it takes all the guesswork out of treatment, which is brilliant because I remember going to seeing different physios and they go, oh, I don't think your posterior chain is recruiting, your glutes and your hamstring aren't firing properly. And again, it's very assumption based on what they're looking at and what they're feeling. But what we do in NRT is we have a really robust assessment protocol. So we look at your body, we look at different inputs, and it shows us exactly where the sensory neural weaknesses lie, which is awesome because we're getting to the root cause of your issue. The tightness is there, as I said, to defend you, to stop you from going into a place of vulnerability. So if you can restore the muscle that's not able to work, the tightness goes away by itself.
Oh, wow. Wow, I may need your help, lady.
I know. We might need to get together. I want to give you an example so that you can kind of like visualize it. But let's say my deltoid, right? So muscle here to here. Think of it like a piece of string. It shortens as I lift my arm. Yeah? Okay. So if, for example, this muscle it doesn't have the information coming into that receptor, it doesn't know where it is in space, how to shorten, how to hold force, it's got no clue. It just doesn't, okay?
Yeah.
And this can be lost through lots of different reasons. This can be underdevelopment, underuse. You can miss different sections. So, for example, if you imagine when you're a little child, if you miss different developmental stages, you can miss whole areas. And if you think of a baby, they start off really closed and small, and they start opening out their fingers and reaching out their fingers, and they're sending and receiving information from those receptors up and down to the brain back. So if you've missed these things, then you can miss whole areas of being able to use sections of your body. And that's why it can come through bad postural practices. It can come through injury. It can come through underuse, underdevelopment. There's lots of reasons that we lose function, but it doesn't really matter why. All that we care about is that we can fix it, that we can get it working again. So if we imagine that this, for whatever reason, this muscle isn't working properly, right? So as I go to lift my arm, there'll be a point that that muscle can't shorten any further for whatever reason. And so to get my arm up further, something will compensate.
Yes.
Will compensate. Yeah?
Yes. I know I have an issue with this shoulder. Well, before it was this shoulder, I had some kind of a pulled muscle, and this was, you know, when I started the challenge, actually, this went away within like about the 2 months in for some reason, but it was always tense up here, and I had some kind of a pain or a pull. And you know, so that's why I had stopped lifting weights for a little bit.
Yeah. And that's so common because we don't know what else to do. We're like, well, why is that tight? And so if you imagine that this doesn't work properly, you're going to get compensation of other things lifting that arm for you because you're trying to go into this space. So what we do is we test it. We look at the shoulder joint, we'll look at different motions, and we'll look at individual, we bias different sections, and we look at different receptors, and we go, okay, what's the information coming like to this receptor? Now, currently there's 22 receptors that we treat in the body.
Oh,
so
wow.
Not just movement, position, and force, skin, fascia, muscle, joint, ocular system, which is the visual system, the information coming in through your eyes, your vestibular system, the information that comes through the receptors that are in our inner canals and our inner ears, that think of it like a level. As it tips from side to side, it sends information about where you are in space. So we can treat all of these different drivers of motion. So there's anything that has a receptor, basically we can treat it. And that means pelvic floor, diaphragm, respiratory muscles, like even things that are internal, we can still treat. And that's been completely fundamental for most of the people that I work with, because if you can't recruit it through repetition, then there is a reason. And that reason is because you don't have good information coming into that receptor. So then we test it and we go, okay, is this even weak or is it something else? Because two things will be happening. One, this muscle can't shorten anymore. And two, the opposing side of the agonist tissue is going to put the brakes on because it doesn't want you to go into a space that it's vulnerable up here. It doesn't have control. Think of it like a map. It's off-road. It doesn't know how to control that map. There's no information in that space. And so if you can put really good information into that shortened or approximated tissue and send it to the brain, you're changing essentially things at the brain level rather than just at a tone change level, and it has long-lasting results. So we don't say permanent, but we've got 15 years of clinical research. It doesn't go away. You might get more access, but typically you don't ever lose as long as you keep going into that space. So let's say I restore all of this muscle that lifts your arm, right? As long as you then go into that space ongoing afterwards, you'll maintain that, you'll keep that. And obviously we'll then give you conditioning or strengthening exercise if you need it for that motion. But otherwise you will keep what we've restored, which is awesome, because sometimes you meet someone, Rosa, and they've got like 100 issues. You go looking at their body and you go, well, this is weak and this is weak and this is weak and this is weak. And they think, oh my God, I'm going to have like a gazillion sessions with you.
Yeah. We're going to be here a while.
We're going to be here a long time. And to be fair, some people are pretty broken. But what happens with the body, as you can imagine, it's the same kind of thing that happens with our health. If something big is causing a problem, then it causes all these other little problems, which are almost symptoms of the big issue. So we look for the biggest weaknesses and then we restore those. And then what will happen is a lot of the little things will go away by themselves. You don't have to treat every single thing. Typically, there will be certain receptors or certain drivers that will be causing the downregulation or the problem in the body.
Yeah, so kind of getting to that root cause. Is it hard to dig deep and find that? Or you probably have a process.
You know how you asked me before about if somebody's health is important for this, and I said, well, there's lots of different impacting things. If somebody is in a really terrible metabolic state as well, they can be in a real state, and so they might have lots of things showing up. But we work with so many different things. We work with arthritis, any kind of injuries, tightness, inhibition, pain, postural issues, autoimmune problems, pretty much anything to do with the body. So you'll get people in a really terrible state. And sometimes it is feels sometimes like a little bit of a needle in the haystack, but because of the assessment protocol, it allows you to hone in on certain areas. So it is actually quite easy. I definitely say it's more challenging online than in person. So the great thing that happened with lockdown for us was I learned how to do this online. Up until that point, it was all one-on-one. And I'd need to get my hands physically on your body to test and to treat your system. But now we can do it virtually, which is amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, and it allows us to be able to help people all over the world. So I work with people in all different countries all over the world. And it has really epic results. And I was a bit worried. I was like, how is this going to be compared to what it's like when I'm like in person?
Yeah.
But, I've been working with Bart. He had
I was gonna say, I saw that you had been helping Bart too, which is amazing.
It's so great because we're in New Zealand together for the first time, and I just moved home after 13 years in London.
Oh, okay.
And so we haven't been in the same country, but he's in the South Island and I'm in the North, and so it's still an ocean away.
Yeah.
And so he's had a 31-year-old injury in his shoulder.
Wow.
And he tried everything, and that was a motorcycle accident originally, and his deterioration of his movement, his muscle tissue, all of that in his shoulder was completely terrible. And he had really excruciating pain where he couldn't put his arm anywhere in this space without agony. And so he tried everything himself, and he's been in the health industry too. And so when I got home and when we started, I was like, well, let's tackle your shoulder. It took us 5 online virtual sessions for me to treat all his muscles and joint receptors in his shoulder.
Oh, wow.
And he can now put his arm in all of this space. He can sleep with it here. He's like, whoa, I'm just keeping my arm up here.
Yeah.
So as long as he continues to go into that space, he will keep the gains that we've created, which is fucking awesome.
That's amazing.
So the online thing is great. Obviously, there's only 20 of us in the whole world that do what I do.
Oh, really? Okay. Wow. So, I was going to ask you like where, if whoever's, listening to this or watching this, if they want to find an NRT specialist, like where is there a place that they can go to look at all of them?
So not currently. So Simon Frost is the founder of NRT, and he is putting together a database, but because it's so small and pretty much all of us are fully rammed with clients, it's out there. You can't look it up online. There's no website to refer to. You can't go and check it out, because the main reason is because we'd be inundated and we wouldn't be able to help people. So the way that I work, the way that we've worked has really just been this word of mouth thing. You see one person. So I had one of my clients that I worked with like 20 years ago, Rosa. So I just I was her personal trainer, and she got awesome results with me and everything. But what I did with her then is nothing that I would do with her now. And
Oh,
so
okay, yeah.
almost reluctant to see old clients, because I'm like, oh God, I was so doing the wrong thing back then. And this doesn't just go to physicality in terms of giving them the wrong exercises or not really knowing how to prescribe exercise, because I was doing what I could with what I currently knew, but sadly it was very, very lacking. And so again, a lot of my prescription came through assumption, through visual assessment and guesswork. And yeah, I wouldn't do what I did. Anyway, her daughter was 15 when she had an injury where she basically jumped up and smacked her head into a glass window.
Oh no.
And she had concussion, she had severe chronic migraines, really bad pain in her neck, and they put her on a whole heap of crap. I mean, we're talking antidepressants,
Oh gosh.
pillars, you name it, and basically told her that she was going to have to deal with it for the rest of her life because there was nothing else that they could do. And
Oh
this is
gosh.
where it just breaks my heart. Like,
Yeah, I hear the story a lot with people. You know, that there's nothing we can do. This is what you're dealt.
yeah,
And
you're going to have
it's
to learn
so
to
not
manage.
true. It's just not true, you know?
No, it's not. And so she had been following my, where I was overseas. She was on my Instagram and whatever.
Oh,
And
okay.
she had seen that I was doing something new and something innovative and something that was like really kind of unheard of. And so when I got back to New Zealand, she said to me, do you reckon you could help my daughter? And I was like, yes. Because I haven't come across anyone I haven't been able to help yet. And this is even like cerebral palsy and like all these things, brain shunts, and people in wheelchairs, and people with autoimmune conditions, and people with degenerative bone disorders, and everything I have been able to help. So I'm like, yeah, I
Wow.
think I can. I'm pretty sure. And so we did 3 sessions with her. And we did her cervical spine, so her neck muscles and joints and receptors, all of them, and her ocular system, so the information coming in through her eyes, her visual system, and her migraines have gone. She's off all of her drugs. She's completely,
Wow.
yeah,
Oh
and that
my
was
gosh,
three
how
sessions.
life-changing for her. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And those stories are always the ones that like make me warm inside, because that's, she's 21 when I got back last year. And she's had 6 years of chronic pain and chronic migraines and chronic problems, and just told that you're going to have to deal with that
Yeah.
as a child. It's not okay. But again, that's all that's known. So it is what it is. And that is what I love about NRT, is it's life-changing. It's instant results, it's long-lasting results, and it can help pretty much everything I've come across so far. And I can say that with the confidence of 10 years of treating people over and over again and seeing those same results with every single client. It isn't this thing where it's hit or miss. It works for you, but it won't work for you. It works for everybody. And I almost feel like eating the way that we do as well, Rosa, works for everybody. Like it is something that is human function, and
Yeah,
it should, it
exactly.
should. If you're doing the right thing, it should.
Yes, exactly. It's so, I mean, something that, is healing. It's our body's natural. It gives our body the building blocks it needs to heal. If you don't give it the right food, it can't heal, right?
Exactly. And it can't function properly. And it's the same with our physical body. It can't function properly if it doesn't have the information in the receptor to tell you what you're asking it to do. So those things really made sense to me. And I wasn't sure about, so I had a woman that had an autoimmune condition where basically your bones melted and fused together.
Oh,
And so when I met her, her range of motion was like this. She could only just lift her arm about yay far out from the side of her body. And again, she'd just been told, you're going to have to deal with it. Like that's all you've got. If she was lying on her back on the floor, she would have to hold this arm. So this was the weak arm, and lift her arm using her other arm. She couldn't even lift her own arm straight in space.
okay.
Her muscle on her shoulder was completely deteriorated so much, it looked like that that her bra wouldn't even sit up. Her bra just fell off her shoulder.
Oh no.
And because of all the compensation, you can imagine, and all these strategies that her body had built to compensate, her spine was all twisted, her shoulder was up here, this shoulder was down here. Like, she was just this twisted, state of a system. And so when she first came to see me and she was like, do you think you can help me? I was like, because with NRT, we can only treat what we can access. So, for example, if your arm can only go to here, that's all the tissue that I can treat. But as her range of motion started to improve, because we got more recruitment and the tissue that was tight started to release and loosen by itself, because it could go into those spaces and it now had that sense of position, movement, and force, then it started coming up and up and up. So it took us a year to get to here, but she's here.
Wow.
So it was really funny because from here to here was really slow. And then we went from about there to there in one session. So
oh my gosh.
because obviously we're talking melted bones. It's different from just restriction. You're combating structural things to allow you to get there. But she had not carried her daughter. So she had a 6-year-old daughter at the time. She'd never carried her daughter up the stairs, basically. And the day she texted me and said, I just carried Sophie up the stairs, I was literally in tears. Because,
oh my gosh, yeah.
Not being able to carry your own child, like, that's life-changing. Her being able to hang up the washing, wash her hair, even like shaving her armpit. She was like, it's the simple things in life that I couldn't do that I now can do.
Yeah.
And she's now like pushing 5-6 kilos in this arm, 20 reps. Like, she's just like so strong, so good. Her posture's all completely changed. Like, that has been life-changing for her. So some people you work with, it is going to be slow going depending on what the ailments are. That is the slowest it's ever taken. Everybody else, depending on what their problem has been, it's pretty quick and it's pretty easy. A girl came to see me recently in New Zealand when I moved home, who was booked in for spinal surgery. The office chairs that have the wheelie bottoms?
Yeah.
She was like lying on that, rolling around her house for 5 weeks. She couldn't walk, like, in a terrible state. Yeah.
Oh wow.
And she came across me and called me and said, I'd really like to see you, but I'm really skeptical. I don't think that anything can help me. I'm booked in for the surgery. And she was booked in for the surgery in 2 weeks. And so I said, well, I don't know. Let's have a look at you. We did 6 sessions in 10 days and they cancelled her surgery.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That is amazing. Wow. That is simply amazing.
They were all the surgeons were baffled. They were like, what have you done? How have you achieved this? Can I have her phone number?
Oh, really? Oh, that's amazing. Yes.
Which is great because, some, depending on the medical person that you can get, they can be very close-minded and,
Yeah.
I understand that because, again,
but the results don't lie, right?
That's it. The results speak for themselves. And she's just done the Mount Everest challenge, which is, we have like a little mountain here, and she's like, you had to climb it X amount of time and X amount of days. She's just finished that. She's in amazing shape. Her health has completely transformed her. It has been life-changing for her, because not being able to walk, means you can't exercise. It means you can't look after your kids properly. She had 3 kids. It's debilitating. And I don't know what they have in the US in terms of like free healthcare, but we have
that I don't know that exists.
Right. So here we have a government funded something called ACC, which is accident. Accident thing. So if you have an accident, then you can get surcharge off, so they have this system here of it being free to go and see physios or go and see, a person. And so a lot of people will be like, oh, well, I'm just going to try the physio because it's free, which I totally get. But so many people will come to me after 6 months and their problems have been exacerbated and they're in a worse state, and they've waited 6 months and they've done all this time doing this repetition of this exercise that's done absolutely nothing but overload the already stressed out tissue and make the weak tissue even weaker, and the imbalances got greater. And now they're like, well, I'm in a worse state. I should have just come to you 6 months ago. And I was like, yes, because I am expensive. I am an investment, but that's because you get instant, long-lasting results. And I've studied, for 20 years to be where I am. And there's only 3 specialists in the world, me, Simon Frost, and one other.
Oh,
and
wow.
the rest are practitioners. So basically,
Okay.
a specialist is someone that can treat anything, any receptor sense in your system. So there's only 3 of me and 20 us in total that do some form of NRT at some level. And so I've worked, and I continue to work. I work my butt off to get here. But a lot of people will be like, oh, I'll just try all this free stuff first. And then they're like, oh my God, I've just wasted so much time and energy and effort. And I could never achieve what I've achieved with you with them, because I didn't have the ability to get that tissue working or recruiting properly.
Well, yeah, and I think that's with a lot of these different problems people have, is a lot of times they want to just go the free route for a while, even especially with health, and they find they're not getting the results. And so it's better to pay a little more money and get the expert to get you there faster, and then you'll be on your way to healing.
Yeah, exactly. And like life's short, and health is an investment. This is all we're guaranteed, is our vessel. Our body is what carries us through everything in our lives. Having a nice car, having a nice house, having a nice whatever, yeah, it's nice, but it shouldn't be people's priority. And that's the distortion, the warped state that our society is in, where we put materialistic things above ourselves, above our health, above our well-being, above our bodies. Whereas actually this is all we have. We don't take anything with us, And so feeling healthy, having full ability to use your body, most people don't know what that feels like.
Well, yeah, and I think it's all, it's like when you're feeling better, when you're functioning better, you don't think it could ever get that good. And then when it is, you're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I never knew life could be this good.
Yeah, totally.
Well, you obviously helping so many people in so many ways. But I want to go ahead and let's dive deep into what led you to do the 90-day fat loss challenge.
Oh my God.
Yes, why did you decide to jump into that? And then let's kind of just walk through the process with that.
Okay, cool. So basically, this is the funniest thing as well, is I was the veggie queen. Like, I changed people from milk to nut milks. I made them use nuts and seeds for everything. I made them use spinach and kale in smoothies, and you name it, I did it wrong.
Yeah. That's okay. I've been there too. I used to be the same way.
I mean, literally, I was the polar opposite of what I do now, which is so funny. And I was resistant to change. Human beings are. We're all a bit resistant. We're like, that can't be right. That's a bit too good to be true. That can't be, no. So what happened was my fiance is a big old nerd like I am, and does tons of research. And anyway, he kept watching these different YouTube videos and stuff. And he went, babe, you need to really watch this. You really need to look at this piece of research, read this, that. And I'm like, I don't have time. I'm too busy. And
yeah.
He kept pestering me. And he went, you need to watch this guy. And he goes, he's a Kiwi guy. He swears like you do. He's got a potty mouth like you, and he's blunt as hell. And I went, oh yeah. And he went, yeah, he's a scientist. You should really watch him. I said, oh, one day. I was like, this is after like months, by the way. I was like, oh, what's his name? And he goes, oh, his name's Professor Bart Kay. And I was like, oh my God.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny.
I was just like, oh my God, that was like my mentor from university. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, show me. I'm like, how many Bart Kays in New Zealand scientists are there? I was like, it must be him. I was like, show me a picture. And I was like, oh my God, that's literally my
that's so funny.
And so I was just like, it was really my fiance that did it. It wasn't me at all. So obviously and he was fanboying so hard because he'd been like, he thinks that Bart's amazing, and obviously his content is insane and his brain is insane. And he was like, so he was fanboying. He's like, do you know him? Do you know him? And I was like, yeah, really well, like really well. So anyway, after I knew it was Bart, I started looking into it, and I was just like, oh my God, I have missed, like, I've been doing the wrong thing. I've missed a ton of information, to the point, Rosa, that like with food, for example, if I always knew to activate nuts and seeds, so I'd soak them and I'd sprout them and I'd dehydrate them, and I knew that there was these processes involved because our bodies couldn't absorb the nutrients. What I was missing is that they were harmful, not the fact that we had to put them through some stupid process to even be able to absorb anything from them, but I was missing the fundamental thing that we shouldn't be eating them in the first place. And so I've done some research to a point and then stopped, and I was quite indoctrinated with what I knew. And so I was like, well, it's healthy, it's brainwashed.
Well, because it comes from nature, right? So it can't be bad for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And if all these people all these years have been telling us about how healthy it is, then it can't be wrong.
It gets in there. It really does. And so I had to really pull my brain apart and relook at it, because I didn't want to give up what I was doing. I loved the way that I was eating. I loved the results from it. I thought it was all positive for me. And it was really hard, because also you're having to also admit that you're wrong, and that you've also taught people and been paid for a really long time to do things that were actually harming them. And it's a bit of a to the ego, to the whatever you want to call it. And so I started looking into it, and I was like, oh my God, oxalates, lectins, phytates, shit. This stuff is like, it makes sense as well. No wonder I've got still issues with my guts, still issues with my skin, still issues, with inflammation. And it just, again, the light bulb went on, and I went, oh yeah. So that's how I first got into it. So what I actually did was I really gradually transitioned over. I went heavy meat based, pulled out all the most toxic plants out of my diet first, started eating in like eating windows and doing slightly extended longer fasts, because I ate 3 times a day, or even snacks in between, 3 to 5 times a day for like most of my adult life. So it was like this real transition. So first I started by just eating 3 meals and having a longer fast on either side and eating in a window, and then I pulled out the toxic ones, and then I brought my quantities down, and then I did it really gradually, and I learned a lot about it. And so I started going heavy meat based in 2020. And then so I was only eating a really small amount of plants, and pretty much the least poisonous plants. And then again, my fiance was like, babe, let's do full carnivore, let's go, because he actually did it before me. And so what year are we? 2022. So he did it in 21. He did full 3 months carnivore. He was away working. It was when I was pregnant with my last daughter. And so he found it really easy, because he was like just cooking burgers and steak basically, and just feeding for himself, so it was easy to do. So he did it, and he had fundamental changes to his health, and he's a trainer as well, and he's really fit and healthy and very active. So for him to go to a next level of his performance and his health, I was like, maybe I should do it. And then I found it really difficult around the Christmassy time. Whenever I eat any carbohydrates, I basically become a sugar fiend. And so after Christmas, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this 90 days. And that's when I decided to do it. So I started on the 10th of January this year. And I went all the way through and did the 90 days. Felt incredible, obviously. Had massive changes in my body composition, in my skin, in my digestive system, in the skin of my stomach from 3 babies. I had these incredibly deep lines in my forehead from all the eyebrow actions I always do.
Me too.
Because I've never done Botox. I've never had any kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I just thought I'd have this deep line here and these deep lines here just forever, and they started to heal, and I was like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
And the skin on my breasts from breastfeeding, and on my skin on my stomach from, and it started to tighten, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And my cankles, my inflammation around my ankles, I actually had an ankle bone, and like all those things that didn't matter how lean I'd been in the past or light I'd been in the past, I'd never got rid of those things, which is why I know that was the inflammation.
Yes.
And so yeah, it was completely transformational for me. So that was how it got me into the 90 days. Once I completed the challenge at that 90-day mark, I just carried on. So I had like a few things off for my birthday, and again it just spun me out. It sent me on this like sugar addict, bloody carbohydrate, and so it's just not worth it for me. So now I'm just carnivore. I don't eat any vegetable matter whatsoever, and I don't miss it either. I'm quite happy without it. I don't.
Well, and your results are so amazing, because I was just looking at them, and yeah, like you can tell there was so much inflammation that went away, and your skin just looks smoother, and it's like you got a mommy makeover.
And I was looking at maybe having a tummy tuck and a boob lift, so it was quite good not to have to go under the knife to achieve that kind of result. So I'm just going to keep going with it. I feel so good that there's no reason for me to stop. And
now, did you have any struggles with when you had to do the fasting part of it?
Only with a little bit. I got a little bit of insomnia at one point when I was doing the longer fasts. So the most I think I did was around 36, 40 hours, and that was it. And then obviously working with the coach and stuff, I was like, that's too much for me. 24, 27 hours is plenty. Still getting that autophagy response. I'm still getting the healing response. I'm just going to stick to this because my sleep is, crucial. I need that to function. So that was the max I did, but that was pretty much the only problem that I had with fasting.
Yeah, I think when you get into the longer fast, that's kind of what naturally happens. I noticed that happened with me too. And so I went all the way through almost to doing the rolling 48.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and you know what I'll say is that I noticed that there wasn't any bigger change from doing like a 36 or a 48. I had trouble with the rolling.
Yeah.
But I think that what you did is just perfect, just doing those 36-hour fast and then feasting. I can go ahead and talk to you forever, Jessica, but I know that you have to go. And I thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your experience today, and telling us all about the NRT technique. So how can people get in contact with you or follow you and get your advice?
Yeah, definitely. So I've got the Instagram, which is the Carnivore Mummy, and I've also got the Jessica treatment, which is my full health-based stuff. And we'll put my email address below for them so that they can email.
Yes, I will put all your links below too. Okay.
Well,
thank you so much, Jessica, and I will talk to you soon.
Yeah, let's do it again soon.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.